Good evening and welcome to the Social Newsroom. And today, having been 1 year since the current president was sworn into office, actually it was on September 13th, we're at September 18th, it's 1 year and 5 days, and we want to ask a question as to whether this current leadership is prioritizing politics over the concerns of the people. And that is, at this very point, the price of living, because the pump prices, just to choose one thing that has developed in the last 1 week, is really pressing people hard in various points. Wherever you might be, whatever point of the economic class that you may stand in. And for this discussion, I'd want to invite two gentlemen, and I'm really honored that you have taken the time to join us. Dr. Isaac Mwaura, he is no stranger to controversy and good sense on matters governance, and he is calls himself the Chief Administrative Secretary for the Prime Cabinet Secretary, as well as the Chair of the Albinism Society of Kenya. He has been in leadership for quite some time and has some thoughts to lend in that aspect, and we'll ask about that CAS position. Mutemi wa Kiama, his title will go with Community Organizer and Movement Builder. So I don't know whether you call this positive movement, community ya watu wa mashinani, watu kule chini, but you'll tell us more about what that is. But Rastaman is also no stranger, whether it's on the social streets, on the matters that he has to share about leadership and holding leadership to account. So let me first ask, it's been 1 year since the leadership of William Ruto, under the leadership of William Ruto. Let's give it a scorecard. On a scorecard of 1 to 10, 1 being very poor, and 10 being very good. How are they doing?
You want me to score my own government?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I think they've done extremely well. I think I would give it about 7.
7?
Yes.
All right. Mutemi wa Kiama, it's been 1 year. Anywhere close to what you thought we would have been at as a nation?
Actually, under the leadership of Ruto, yes, we are where I thought we would be. Faster than I thought we would be. I thought it would be in maybe 2 years, but it's faster.
So where is that in your scorecard?
I'll use a scale that was developed by his chief economic advisor, Dr. Devon D, when he was grading former first President Kenyatta, President Moi, Kibaki, and Uhuru. And the highest grade, I think, was for Kibaki, who got around, I think, 3. So I would put Ruto's administration as 1.5 out of 10.
You think it's too soon to call, 1 year on?
Yes, it is too soon to call. In fact, sometimes you feel like people want you to deliver within 1 year. Of course, the expectations were high. And give it to the fact that then, of course, you have a very robust plan with 5 key pillars and the expectations here and there. But I think personally, I'm fairly impressed by what has happened. By the way, Mark, it takes about 24 months for a government to settle. And I've just come from having a meeting with the Prime CS, Masai, and it is true. You still don't even have, for example, certain very critical aspects of government properly constituted, you see, like cabinet office, even his ministry under the presidency. You know for sure the issue of the CAS is still, a matter of court contestation.
It's actually unconstitutional. It's already been ruled by the 3-judge bench.
There are 3 conflicting judgments of courts of concurrent jurisdiction. So that will be determined by the Court of Appeal. So
as it stands, though, it's unconstitutional.
No, it doesn't stand unconstitutional because there are 3 conflicting decisions of courts of concurrent jurisdiction. I hope you are getting what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
If you and I are on the same level, if you have a different opinion than mine, then somebody higher than us should make that determination.
But as it stands, just to appreciate where we are, CAS position doesn't exist. Like, you're not in office. You're not operating. In all honesty,
I am trying to tell you, that is your opinion. There is already a matter before court to disagree with your position.
Okay, but the reality of it is, are you working?
No,
Are you being paid for it?
I am trying to tell you that there is a contested decision of the High Court, of one court, of equal mandate.
Okay.
Yes.
So the reason I'm really on that point is if a year on we're still on positions, then there's something off in terms of the leadership. Little wonder that we are where we are as a country. Would you agree?
I think it's a general principle that governments take up to 24 months to settle. It's not easy to set up government.
Do you buy that?
If it was a totally new regime that came in 2022, then I would believe that. If they, came in with a new president, new CS and all that. But this is just a continuation of the previous regime. William Ruto was the deputy president in the previous regime for quite a substantial amount of time. The same PSs and CSs went on, including even the head of secretary to the cabinet and head of civil service, Kenya. So I find that a bit not very factual.
Yeah.
But also, I'm also interested in whether Mr. Mwaura is earning a salary as a CAS, because he's avoided that question that you've asked him. Is he being paid for CAS? Because, as you said, if there's conflicting decision and they've chosen maybe to take the one that does not conflict with their position, his appointment as a CAS, is he earning a salary?
You can answer it. He's here, right of reply.
You're the one who asked the question. That's why I'm
because I have asked it, but I'll bring it to you this way, because the president did say after that, what you're now saying is a conflicting ruling, the three-judge bench ruling. He did ask for patience to you and the others who had been given the positions as CAS. So in limbo, what happens? What happens with Dr. Isaac Mwaura? Is he serving in pro bono?
I think you are almost getting to having an ad hominem argument.
Okay. But you can just answer the simple one.
Are you Mark, being paid? Allow me to say that we are now getting into an ad hominem argument and say, let the matter be determined in court.
Okay.
And that is a patience that the president was asking for. And then we delve now into the issues about the delivery, public service delivery, and whether, for example, if you had more hands and minds in government, you would deliver more to Kenyans. Yeah.
So you do agree that we're not delivering what we should be delivering to Kenyans?
It would be a lie. It would be a lie to say that we are getting it 100%. I mean, that is not fair to Kenyans. It's not fair even to ourselves. Because even a baby has to really develop like any other child. Like you have to crawl, you have to, sometimes stagger a little bit before you know how to walk. And maybe my friend, who you have been with in civil society. By the way, let me tell you, my friend, I don't think you ever quit civil society per se. Maybe it could be the one, there's the master status, what people see. But if you truly believe in social change, it's just that you change. You move from one room to another. Okay, this is not a completely new administration. I do agree. But for sure, for the last 4 years of the Uhuru administration, William Ruto was effectively the government in opposition. And Raila Odinga became the opposition in government. So people traded places for all intents and purposes. Some of us who had gone in on Jubilee were even thrown out of parliament. I was a victim. Actually, I was the symbol of being thrown out of parliament, and I was taken through hell for 10 good months, to the point that I had even been gazetted. So we really can't therefore then appropriate governmenting on us, because we did not profit from the full, privileges of serving or superintending over the affairs of Kenyans at that point in time, because then there was a change, there was a handshake. So that's why then, of course, Kenyans agreed with our part of the political divide. Yeah. And hopefully, of course, we thank God that we were able to be given the mandate to rule.
You've given the argument that standard 24 months, but there's a 3-month promise that is always given by a government, especially in campaign season. First 100 days, none of which has been delivered. Should we, and even Dr. Ndi did ask one of the people that were questioning online in the TIFF, you actually believe the politicians? You're a politician. Are those just, hizo ni stories za jaba?
Hapana, sio stories za jaba. There is a reality of coming into office. Let me just tell you, for example, so 3 months, it depends on when you start counting. You can't count from 9th of August. You can't count from 15th of August because that's when William Ruto was declared president. You cannot count from the 5th of August, 5th of September when the Supreme Court upheld his promise, his election, sorry. You can only count from 13th of September.
Right.
So today being, 18th of September, it's exactly 5 days since he was sworn into office.
1 year, 5 days.
1 year, 5 days, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
And so therefore then the question would be, if you look at the plan, right? It is divided into 6 months, into 12 months, 18 months, 36 months, and beyond.
Okay.
And was part of the crafting of the plan. So we really don't have this 100 days kind of promise in the plan, because what is the point of reference? Is it a roadside declaration? It is contestable. But if you go by the plan, which I can defend, we are still in line. So maybe not fully what we would have planned or thought about, but we are trying to execute as much as is possible. Why? Because, Mark Masai,
yeah.
we inherited a country that is actually was on the edge of the precipice. It was actually in an economic ICU. It was actually insolvent. It had overborrowed more than its GDP. So now to roll back that, for example, to not to borrow about 500 billion, cutting down expenditure of 300 billion, you are talking about a government that has actually saved a whole 800 billion from its own expenditure. That for me is extremely commendable. When you talk about, for example, the issue of employment, and you see 55,000 teachers employed within a year, it has never happened in the history of the Republic of Kenya. When you talk about the issues of fuel, I know that is the elephant in the room. Now, for quite some time, we were spending about 16 billion a month to subsidize fuel. And so we were living a lie. So what did we say? Let us remove these subsidies so that then we can actually recalibrate the real cost of the economy, because then we cannot push on this forever. Why? Because it was taking away the whole of our development expenditure as at then.
Okay.
So you can really see a situation where you are trying to roll back, us getting, jumping off over the cliff and taking us back. That may not necessarily be appreciated, because it may not necessarily deliver into quick wins, because if you are operating from below ground level, by the time you come to ground level, people may not see the impact. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the 212 figure that we're paying for a liter right now, petrol, is justified given where we were? Are you saying that?
I don't want to say justified. It sounds a little bit cruel, but it is realistic. Maybe that's the word I would use. Part of it also is because of the issue of the dollar. For sure, when William Ruto took over government, we were doing almost $109. It has increased to 150. And there was a projection that by the end of the year, it should be 180. Now, the dollar is losing its value up to 93% since the 1900s, I think, and 80s, if I'm not wrong. But then our shilling is losing the value further. And it's not just Kenyan currency. If you look at South Africa, the rand has lost its value by up to 60%.
Okay.
Yeah? So that has a very serious effect. So what was the reaction? First, you see President Ruto leading a very serious campaign of de-dollarization, so that if you are buying something from Tanzania, you can buy them from in T shillings and K shillings. And then if you buy them from Saudi Arabia, the oil in bulk, then you pay it in Kenya shillings. Okay. And I think that's a good move, because even when you go abroad, your card, you are given an opportunity to either buy in dollars or in Kenya shillings.
All right. Mutemi, I don't know how you're hearing this and the explanation given by the government. First of all, they say they inherited an economy that was in the pits. Wengine wanasema store ilikuwa empty, haikuwa na kitu. And then there's the aspect of international headwinds that are contributing to where we are. What are you believing in terms of the explanation?
I think with all due respect, Mr. Mwaura, I won't call him CAS Mwaura because he has not confirmed whether he's employed or not. I think it's disrespectful to Kenyans, especially Kenyans who, for the last few years, a majority of Kenyans are educated. They can see things. They can see the international trends.
Yeah.
They can tell, for example, if you, Russia is at war with Ukraine, and according to Wadadisi Wamambo, it's actually at war with the West, with NATO. But if you look at the comparison between the values between the ruble and the dollar over the last 2 years, it's negligible. Same with the yuan, despite the talk about BRICS and all that. So we cannot compare ourselves with another mismanaged African country, which is South Africa. It's like unajipima na you're poor in class, but you're comparing yourself with the people who mko number last now. I think Kenyans expect much better, and especially based on what you asked, the initial question you asked, the promise, the 100 days, the promise, especially even around the price of fuel. I'm sure you've seen the clips that are circulating of William Ruto making promises, castigating the government, which he was part of. He talked about the Ministry of Issues and Cartels in the Ministry of Petroleum or Energy. He was very categorical what the issue was at that time. He made a promise. Mr. Mwaura has talked about purchasing fuel from Saudi Arabia using Kenya shillings. First of all, that never happened. Experts have talked about it. But then also taking oil or fuel, petroleum on credit. It has never happened in the world. What has it done? It has, over the last few months, we are in a hole, just paying the interest on that credit that we took. I think it's about 70 billion or something. I'm not sure about the figure, but it's 60 to 70 billion. On top of the cost of fuel, because we took it on credit.
Right.
So I think the best, and I refer to Ndi, because Ndi is the one who's been most critical.
And he's the economic
advisor. He's the economic advisor. He's the one who came up with he talks about the plan. Bottom up is the one who marketed it and that kind of thing. And he's the one who was very critical of the previous regime. But what did he say yesterday in that conversation he was having on Twitter? He said, he quoted himself, saying that Kenya has been living on debt, which, correct, Mwaura said, beyond its capacity. We have overborrowed, and we expect by after living, it's called what? Just being indisciplined around borrowing, that we are going to get out of it, easily. He's categorical. He said it's like, and he used a very bad analogy. I wish he hadn't used that, but he did use it. Yeah. Talked about cancer. It's like a cancer patient who's undergoing chemotherapy. It's painful. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. So I think
even doctors lose patience.
And doctors, even Harvard University-trained doctors, lose patience. So he cannot guarantee anything. And I think the fact that he was candid. I think that's the most truth we've had. I think because he's not a politician. Mwaura is a politician. He can't even announce whether he's earning a salary or not, because in politics, facts vary depending on the situation. So I respectfully disagree with my colleague, Mr. Mwaura. I don't think this economy is doing very well. But I understand where he's coming from, because he can't really bash his own government. And you saw what happened after Ndi spoke. Yes. The deputy president issued a statement castigating him and Moses Kuria. So
do you associate, and I'll ask Dr. Mwaura, because you say you were part of the team that put the economic, or the plan, 6 months, 12 months, 36 months plan forward for the current government, and that involves the economic outlook. You have someone who is the economic advisor posting these sentiments and, you know, putting it in the faces of Kenyans, saying it is what it is, do you associate yourself with what the economic advisor David D said? Or what's your reaction to that?
I think, I believe personally that we have been in worse off situations than the way we are today. And that there is every reason to be hopeful that things will improve.
Help a layman understand what you mean worse off when the price of fuel hasn't been at this rate. The, you know, the dollar, the value of the dollar, the shilling to the dollar hasn't been at this, where we are. Help someone understand.
Part of this is sorry to butt,
or even what 1,000 can buy.
Part of the insincerity, sorry to butt in, is the fact that the explanation that has been given is that the economy is bad because of the price of the dollar and the fuel. Yet we have comparable figures of what the price of fuel was internationally last year. Around this time, it was actually what it is internationally today. But fuel in Kenya was selling at 150 shillings. Now it's selling at 211. And we've talked about the subsidy and that kind of thing. If you look at the price in Uganda, and the President Ruto asked, mbona mafuta yako cheap Uganda kuliko Kenya? And I would ask the same question as Mr. Mwaura responds.
Now, I think I don't know whether I have two hosts or I have one.
It's a conversation.
It's a conversation, yes, but
yeah.
I think I am used to a debate where if my colleague is speaking, I allow him to prosecute his case. But when he butts in when I am talking, I feel gagged. So kindly. Because I listen to you, so allow me also to respond.
You're seeking protection? Okay.
No. I'm listening. No.
Okay.
The question to you then, let me rehash that so that he said what he said, but he apologized. He gave the disclaimer, apologies for butting in. But the question to you was your reaction to what the economic advisor to the president has said in the sentiments he's put out there in the last 48 hours that says to Kenyans, it is what it is. And you were answering that we've been in a worse off situation.
I was answering that. And I think also it's not asking for protection. I don't need protection. I only need...
you did protest, but anyway, go on.
I need fair debate where when I'm listening to him accusing me of all manner of things, I respect his view.
Right.
And he should also do the same. I think when I say we've been in this difficult situation, Mark, what I mean is that in comparative terms, even if 1,000 shillings has lost its
value,
purchasing power, it could be comparable to another different epoch or time, economic time, So I think we like if you look at when President Kibaki inherited the economy, it was really bad. In fact, I think they had to borrow money to finance free primary education. You may be aware that by the time this government came to power, there was only 19 million shillings in their account. So let's just appreciate the fact that things have been worse off. I would want to imagine that before a patient is fully recovered, you cannot say with certainty they are going to die. Yeah, and I also believe in miracles. Things change. And what we should be selling to Kenyans is hope, not despair. Because by the end of the day, hope is the one that makes you know that you have a clean day at the beginning, in the morning, and that within these 12 hours or 24 hours, you can do so much, rather than believing that nothing can change, and therefore we should just resign and maybe go back to bed. So I think Kenyans, much as we will be the ones who will get ourselves out of this hole. And for sure, it's not very easy. Because that means instead of us going on a borrowing spree, which is what the previous administration did, then we try to see which areas of the economy can improve so that we get more revenue that can finance our priorities in terms of increasing productivity, and of course ensuring that these resources are not misused by public officials simply because they are the ones who have the keys to the granary, if you can get what I want to say. Now, we have to keep hope alive and make sure that that happens. And give credit to President Ruto, because the moment there was even some kind of suspicion of corruption at KEMSA with the issue of the buying of the procurement of mosquito nets, he actually sacked a whole principal secretary who was only in office, I think, for some few months. So it's not easy, but there is that political goodwill to steady the ship. And I couldn't think we could have a better president who really is very determined. If you look at, for example, right now, I have been to the US during the United Nations General Assembly. People go there to make speeches and maybe 1 or 2 meetings. But you can see he's even gone to Silicon Valley. He's trying to get new investors. Right. Because he believes in spurring the economy from the bottom up. Look at, for example, so that you can see. People were being shylocked by these fintech companies. But now, Hustler Fund has now brought on board 20 million Kenyans who are benefiting from this microcredit. It's a phenomenon. And out of which, over 2 million new M-Pesa subscribers have been onboarded into the formal financial system. Now, that's quite commendable within a year. And you could see the passion of a president who has inherited almost a bankrupt country in betting to help the hustlers who helped him by placing 50 billion shillings, to give them affordable credit. And Mark, you and I may not see the value of 1,000 shillings. But if that is what...
Oh, I do.
No, I say you may, not that you don't.
Just clarify.
Okay, because that makes a lot of a difference in terms of the people on the ground. Because they live, they get a daily wage of about 200 to 300 shillings. So, and it makes a difference. I met a lady from Kajiado, and she told me she sells this melon. And she borrowed 700 shillings from, Hustler Fund. And out of which she was, she got 665. I think the rest is some kind of a savings there. And then that money, she is supposed to repay within 2 weeks. And by the time she was repaying 2 weeks, she had already doubled her income. And she hawks the pieces of fruits around.
So it's working for some?
It's working for the people at the bottom of the pyramid. Okay. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense. Let me give another example, Mark, before we proceed. I hear my friend here saying that this government is exactly where he expected it to be. So then what do you need to deal with somebody who is a pessimist? Somebody who did not expect much from his government. And that kind of, low opinion on ourselves cannot spur economic entrepreneurship. Leaders are peddlers of hope. Yeah, that is Obama saying. And in fact, Napoleon Bonaparte said that leaders are dealers in hope. So our work is not to point to where we are coming from with a view that then things will remain the same way. So ours is to ensure, Mark Masai, that we actually, even when there is evidence of the contrary, tell the people that no matter how bad it is, we can still rise from our ashes.
Peddlers of hope.
Yeah. Just like
Mapediwa hope.
Yeah?
Mapediwa hope.
Hey, Mapediwa hope.
I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. But let me ask this, and I'll let you speak as well, Mutemi. How can you sell hope, which won't buy you anything, and how do you tell someone that we are in a better place when everything that is happening around in terms of cost of living, taxation, is going up? There is a place of being realistic. And I'd even posit, owe it to the public to say, we had promised this, we apologize. In hindsight, not possible. Now let's recalibrate. Do you believe there's a place for that?
Now, I'll give you a story. There's a mother who goes out there to look for food for her children, and she's not successful. And when she's not successful, she comes home to hungry children. Mm-hmm. I think the role of a parent is not to discourage the children and showing them that they have come to the end. You must tell them, even if today we are not successful, tomorrow we are likely to. Because it's a question of, trying, and when you keep on trying, you get it right. In fact, even the best of inventors failed many times. But you cannot therefore say that now we come and face the reality and say things are very bad, and so therefore we must lose hope, then so what? So what, Mark? If we all agree that things are worse off and that nothing can be done, so what? Does it mean then we are done with Project Kenya? No, no, no. We will agree with the fact that things may not move as fast as we may have expected. Indeed, maybe we had not quantified exactly the macroeconomic variables that would have determined where we wanted to be. But we cannot lose the momentum of trying to improve on the lives of Kenyans. And why am I saying so? Because we've not failed in every other endeavor. No, 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 no. We have some gains. We have some that may not have worked very well. There are some that may not have taken off. But for example, the issue of housing. Housing, we anticipate that one house will give 8 to 10 young people a job. But it's now that we are commissioning these houses. I remember commissioning some in Thika. The president commissioning some in Thika. I was in the presence on 9th of August. Now I could see some Juakali artisans being subcontractors there. They were in orange aprons. Now, you see, it will take time before that matures up. So let us not be so quick to throw the baby with the bathwater. It is the first year of President William Ruto having inherited a very dilapidated economy. There are some great things, like, for example, the fertilizer, which has been reduced from 7,000 to 2,500, which is good. I mean, we anticipated that rains would come, and of course they have come. That's why you can see some marginal decrease in the price of unga, which is commendable. We, of course, would want to ensure, for example, in the long term, that seed oil, is produced locally, because it's a 25 billion shilling economy. But then it will take time before that actualizes. So we are at the foundation level. Okay. Even if you are not seeing the house, but at least there's something that is happening beneath. But
at least there's a place of accepting failure. If you will speak about the success, you've mentioned the fertilizer, you've mentioned the Hustler Fund, which the government speaks about. And to be honest, I don't think any sane Kenyan would want the government to fail, because a failing government means a failed country, a republic, and we won't be able to fend for ourselves. Everyone is in the best interest for this nation. But there's a place to say, we have failed here, and we apologize. Let's move forward, even in selling hope realistically, I believe. But Mutemi.
Thanks, colleague Mwaura, for that story of the mother. You didn't finish the story. So she comes home and she puts rocks in a sufuria and boils the rocks to give the kids hope. That, and basically what you're saying is that serikali ya Ruto imeweka mawe kwa sufuria na inachemsha maji, so that the kids can have some hope. And I agree with you that it's important to sell hope, but you sell hope once you've admitted where the problem is. And that's, I think, the problem you're having. That people are saying, if President Ruto stood on a rostrum and said, or say, this is what I promised, these are how things are, we'll have to tighten our belts. Every time there's a crisis, for example, someone was commenting today, he takes off, he goes abroad, and then the price of fuel comes up when he's not around. And then he'll not talk about it when he lands. But the issue we have is it's not that you're pessimists. It's actually that you are realists. Kenyans work extremely hard. Kenyans work from 4 a.m. for 3 hours from Kangemi to industrial area, and then 3 hours in the evening going back home to work. Kenyans don't want to be hataki tupake chupa mafuta. Kenyans know where the economy is, because it's hurting in their pockets. It's hurting in the food that they eat. And what they want, tunataka heshima, dignity. They want to be respected. They don't want to be lied to. They don't want to be told, to be given, give them hope, but don't give them hope by lying to them. That is disrespect. For example, you say that this government has not borrowed. It's all over the papers, economic experts, that this government has borrowed more this year than the previous regime, 1.3 trillion. It's true also that the Finance Act this year is the most punitive ever in Kenya's history. That is the reality. Kenyans can feel it in their pockets. Starting this month, the reason why the price of fuel has gone is part of that taxation. I think we are the only country in the world that taxes tax. Because if you look at you look at the price of petroleum, most of it is, half of it is tax. And then you add VAT on that tax. So you're actually taxing tax. The government is even making other proposals in agreement with the IMF to increase VAT to 18%, give whatever reason that we want to harmonize with the East Africa community or whatever. But basically, tax extracurricular activity like swimming. I'd be surprised if you supported that, especially being the, is it the chairman of Kenya Association of?
The Albinism Society.
Albinism Society, which is a community that has been very marginalized, and you fought for. I'll give you that. You really fought for to mainstream that. And this discrimination, how do you even think of taxing? Where do you sit and think of taxing swimming? A government that has never built a single swimming pool wants to tax swimming. A government that Kenyans run away to go abroad because there are no economic activities here. Now wanafuatwa huko na tax. Those Kenyans are the ones who support their families back home. You know, Kenyans in the diaspora. Serikali na keti, some people sit somewhere and decide, okay, ni wapi tutatoa pesa ingine, wacha tuende hao wako ng'ambo wako na pesa mingi sana. You know, like what kind of insidiousness? I try to imagine people sitting in a room, whether in Treasury or State House, thinking like, where can we squeeze more?
Yeah.
You know, and the government, the Ruto's government's promise, bottom up, and we had hope, was that they're going to expand the tax bracket, revenue through expanding the tax bracket. But what they are doing is squeezing the ones who have pay slips. The ones who have pay slip are the ones who are paying for matanga, education, fundraising, hospital bills, despite having private, whatever. They are paying, they pay privately for security. They pay privately for education for their kids. They pay privately for health care. They pay privately, even buying 4x4. I'm sure Mr. Mwaura came here in a 4x4 because he can't trust our roads. But you know, you're squeezing these guys, the same people who take care, who are always overtaxed already on the payslip and then tax again because they have to go into their pockets to pay for things that government is supposed to provide, you know, the basic things that are supposed to be provided. So we are asking for heshima, you know, dignity, Mr. Mwaura, and I know you know this. That's why I'm having difficult having this conversation with you, because this is your platform, actually. This is a platform that took you to get you nominated to parliament, because you speak about dignifying a Kenyan, kujenga Mkenya.
Yeah.
So that's my request to this government, which I never supported. And
At least you have admitted that.
No, it's I never supported this government.
Okay.
But that's why my expression was low, and now it's even lower because I'd expected this government to take about 2 years to stabilize the economy, but then the Draconian Finance Act shows that they have no interest in that.
Would you say, Dr. Mwaura, that the tax regime under the government so far is or has been most punitive in comparison, based on what wananchi wanasema? Now, unawasikiza, you listen to the people, and based on the facts.
No, well, I think we just have to foot our bill. Yeah. There are no two ways about it, unfortunately. And I know when we speak about payment of tax, let's not imagine that Isaac Mwaura is not paying the same tax. I am. Let's not imagine that we are not feeling the pinch, for example, of the cost of electricity. I mean, Mark Masai, you'll agree with me, the cost of electricity is extremely high. It has actually increased by 67%. So we are not in denial of that fact. Only that, by the way, I don't know whether anyone between the three of us has been following what I've been saying. I warned about borrowing in 2014. You can go to the Hansard record, you will see.
Okay.
I warned about the increase of nominal debt from 3 to 4.5 trillion. I vehemently oppose it because I have done development economics at the postgraduate level. And the requirement from my studies, because I did that, is 28 to 35% based on scientific research. In fact, IMF proposes 30%, so it's the same one. Now, our debt to GDP ratio is way, way up, almost 60%. At some point, we were even almost in the red, it was 68%. It has marginally dropped by about 2% or so. But the point I'm trying to insist is, in 2014, I said that the one who is going to be president in 2022 will have no country to govern.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, these are conversations that we had internally, so we knew what we were up to. Yeah. For example, if you look at roads, the Kenyan government has inherited, roads outlay of 900 billion against an annual budget of 250 billion. And every time we go to meetings, every other place needs a road. You get, huh? So yes, the situation is dire. The beauty of it is that President Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza administration, is not that we did not know what we were getting ourselves into.
But did you give unrealistic promises during campaigns?
No. I don't think they're unrealistic, because I think we have not quite boiled down to... You see, there is what the media reports. And the agenda was set very clearly by a hostile media, sorry to say this, which did not cover our 67%. It went to Azimio. I'm sure maybe that's where my brother was supporting. So they said the agenda that within 100 days...
supported Ruben Kigame, but...
It's okay, it was not in the ballot, so not unless you're confessing you never voted. So...
Actually, I did not vote for
Yeah, so if you don't vote, then you represent the 8 million, and maybe you don't have necessarily the latitude, therefore, to critique this government, because as a community organizer, who I respect, because that's my background, you must exercise your franchise.
But he does have the right as a citizen, because the president becomes substantially president of all.
Yeah, and taxes are not only paid by
No, but he would have a better legitimacy, in my humble submission, if he had cast his vote. Now, let's proceed so that we, again, don't end up in...
But those who cast their vote feel that they were betrayed by the promises that were made.
They have every reason to feel the way they do,
yeah, and
question their choice based on the realities that they are facing. It is our responsibility, those of us who went ahead to persuade them, it's a campaign, to vote for us, to explain the situation as it is and what we foresee in the future. Let me say this. Even the NAC administration, the NAC government, the platform upon which they were voted for was utopian. It was really utopian. But with the benefit of hindsight, we can say for sure that administration achieved far much more than what many people would now, adjudge fairly compared to other, other regimes. But if you have to look at the NAC, the original NAC dream is way, way higher. So I think it is true. It is true. I mean, I must concede that if you want to aim at the sun, at the moon, you aim at the sun. So yes, there could be some things that have not yet fallen right, but then it doesn't necessarily make us any better of leaders if we start wallowing in that kind of misery. And sometimes misery loves company. No, I would want, personally, as Isaac Mwaura, I would want us to be dissuaded of that fact. Yes, it is true. We may be getting what we may not have expected, but it doesn't mean we should stop trying. We, by the virtue of the fact that we knew what we were getting ourselves into, then the realities of us being in this administration means that also we will recalibrate accordingly. But it would be unfair as well,
yeah,
to apportion blame for the sake of political, sportsmanship.
Got you.
Yeah.
Would you recalibrate and perhaps even rebrand then the promise of bottom-up to something else, because it hasn't been, to many, a bottom-up promise kept?
No, I wouldn't, because, for example, there are very many young people who the president made it very clear, for you to be a revenue service assistant at KRA,
yeah,
the minimum qualification was D+. 1,400 Kenyans from various backgrounds, I was in their pass out in Eldoret, got an opportunity to be employed by KRA. Now, that's a real bottom-up. Many Kenyans who are now going to be employed as servicemen in the military are ordinary Kenyans. Bottom-up, what is about bottom-up? For example, those people who are being Shylocked now can get affordable credit through Hustler Fund. Those farmers who could not afford fertilizer for 7,000 now can access. That young man or woman who was qualified to go to junior secondary schools, and now that opportunity is being availed by ensuring that there are classrooms that have been built so that they can go to high school. That university student who could not access help that has now been doubled from 15 billion to 30 billion. For me, when I look at the county integrated, industrial parks, and the potential they have of creating jobs. When I look at the value proposition versus the value addition, when I look at the reform that Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is leading or championing in terms of coffee and tea, for me, when you look at the 500 milk coolers that have been purchased so that then you democratize the milk industry, when you look at the 100 dryers that are also being distributed to ensure that you actually do away with the produce, getting lost in the process. When you look at the revitalization of the KCC, for example, I mean, if you look at even, the way we are looking at the climate change and having electric motorbikes and what have you, something is being done. When you look at a company like Moderna coming to invest $500 million to produce their medicine here, when you look at the idea of having the leather industry take off because we import 25 million shoes, yet we can produce them locally because we were the third largest country with the number of herds, cattle, here. So those are the kind of things that, for me, I would want to ask Kenyans, yes, indeed, there may be a disappointment here and there, but let us not lose sight of the bigger picture. I believe we can do it.
It remains bottom up.
Yeah.
Kiama, in your honest assessment on the bottom-up promise and where we are?
I think what sums up bottom-up for me was a question someone asked yesterday. When President Ruto was in Silicon Valley, he made a promise to the tech billionaires there, and he made some concessions. And someone asks, those guys are getting waivers, but the ordinary person here is not getting waivers. Dr. Mwaura talks about electric bikes. That bike can only do 1 hour. Then it takes 2 hours to charge 2 batteries. I mean, let's be realistic. What are you talking about? Talks about, let's talk about farmers, maize coolers. So there's a lot of motion, but very little movement. Because we talk about fighting cartels in the coffee sector. The price of coffee, last year, my dad sold a kg of coffee at 120. Now it's 60 bob. That's 60 bob out of, with the economy as it is right now. What is that? That's the real bottom up. Like, my dad voted for Ruto. Right now he can't, when he's having that conversation asking me for 1,000 shillings, I know it's pinching.
Yeah. Hope we don't rub it in his face that he voted.
So, no, I can't. He's my dad. So I can't do that.
Yeah. So, and
but
that's
for me, that's what bottom up
It reflects what's happening on the ground.
Yeah.
But let me ask something that you didn't quite answer. And this is someone who is in government, the economic advisor, David Ndii. You've mentioned the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. Do you believe David Ndii with what he had to say? And I could quote some of the tweets. I don't believe politicians. I don't trust government. If you do, either you are a sucker. Finally, I've been advised that I owe the public empathy. I don't agree. I do not subscribe to sentimentality in the conduct of public affairs. I owe my position in this society to speaking truth to power brutally. I ruffle feathers. Do you believe David Ndii owes an apology?
I think that is his personal opinion.
Not as the economic advisor.
That is his personal opinion. That is not the stand of the Kenya Kwanza administration. We ourselves believe that there is a better way to communicate to the public, even when you disagree, even when there is truth to be told. And I don't think that really borders on arrogance. And I fully associate myself with the sentiments of the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. And that's a difference, by the way, between politicians and technocrats. Yeah, because you see, it's not because we cannot see the reality, but we are peddlers of hope, remember. We must sell hope even when there is evidence to the contrary. Why? Because if you don't, what are you leaving the people to? So yes, David Ndii has his right. Personally, I have agreed with him. I have disagreed with him before. And I don't want to be seen to be attacking him directly. I think that's not fair.
Yeah.
But I do not quite agree with his sentiments. Sometimes, even if that is the truth, there are things you speak in the boardroom. Because when you speak things internally, even here at Sema Box, there's what you say so that you develop your strategy.
Yeah.
I think there's no doctor who goes to tell you that now you are just about to die. You go and announce in the wards, "Oh, you, thou people, thou sleepeth here. You know, you are going to die tomorrow." You have to keep on trying. Even that's why we resuscitate patients.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been in that situation myself with my own children.
Right.
So you have to continuously keep on trying. If you read a book by, I think, Dr. Jonathan Spencer, called "Who Moved My Cheese?" That's the whole idea about governing a country. There are those who are waiting for things to happen because they feel they are entitled to it. And unfortunately, majority of us sometimes tend to be in that situation. But there are those who say, okay, today I'm not gotten, let's keep on chasing the maze. And eventually they get into a solution. By the way, Mark Masai, there are two groups of people. Each group is told to make pots. Yeah? So one of them decides to sit down and strategize and to get all the ideas in the world. And eventually they make a very good pot. The best that can sell for hundreds of dollars. Then there's another one that just starts making these pots. And some of them, they don't look very good, they're not very shapely and whatever. But eventually they keep on learning from their mistakes and they keep on improving. Eventually when the time is up, then the two groups are going to be assessed. So the question would be, which is a better group? Personally, I would choose the one that started with the mistakes, but kept on trying. And that is what I would ask of the Kenya Kwanza administration and Kenyans. That yes, it's a matter of trying. We have the vision, we have the intentions. But as a student of public policy, I'll tell you, good intentions are never enough. There's much more to it. The Kenya Kwanza administration is a peace and revolution. Let me tell you, it's a peace and revolution. There are not very many experienced politicians in government, as would have been compared to Azimio.
Would you say that about the cabinet that you have? It's not experienced?
No, generally. If you look at the age of the people is younger.
Right.
Our president came to power at 55 years old.
Yeah.
So majority of the people, apart from my boss, Musalia Mudavadi, majority of the rest are actually below him. You get her? In terms of the executive, of course, Moses Wetangula is just turned 65 the other day. But majority of the people who are now holding key positions are much younger. And that means then there's an element of experience that comes with it. But then the opportunity,
that they lack.
That needs to be learned. I don't want to say they lack. But then there's also the opportunity to innovate. You see, there's the opportunity to try new things. So I think just like this is not a conventional way of doing news, but here we are.
Yes.
So please give us that opportunity. It may not move as fast as we would have wanted as well.
Yes.
But we want to imagine that with your goodwill and some little bit of patience, these are going to stabilize. And I think it's better that we deal with the issue now than wait when it's the fourth or fifth year. I am very optimistic that by the time we hit the third year, things will be much, much better. Because we were living a lie. We inherited an economy that had unbudgeted projects worth hundreds of billions of shillings.
Okay.
Now, we can't keep on using the rear mirror, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are not coming out of the pit.
Okay. Yeah. And I want to ask you, similar to what you spoke about, David, indeed, to Moses Kuria, CS, trade, nonetheless, a very important docket. You've spoken about experience and the government as it is, the executive and where they are in experience, and there needs to be more learning, as you've said. And he posted, I repeat, petrol will be 260 shillings by Feb, and El Nino is coming in 3 weeks that will last till March. These are global and climate change driven. Responsible leaders ought to tell the truth to prepare the people. You can throw stones at me all you want. Was this responsible of him?
No, it was not.
He actually asked us to go and dig our own words.
Yeah, it was not, and he has been reprimanded.
Yes.
Because you don't talk to people that way. Honestly, even if the El Nino is coming, we all knew it was coming anyway. You don't become a weatherman by pronouncing yourself that way. I don't think it's fair to tell people to go and dig their own wells. Let's try and see. We cannot just wait for fuel to be 260 shillings. Try something. I mean, even if you go by the analogy of cooking stores, which I don't quite agree.
Which actually happened.
Yeah, it's a true story.
It's a true story.
It's a true story. Yeah.
Yes.
So even if try to, it's not because you are trying to lie to people, but I mean, necessity is the mother of invention. because that is a reality now. What
Okay.
are we doing?
Okay.
And I think where there's a way, there's a way. And there's always a solution to every problem. So I think that gives the view that some people have given up. And that's not the case. At least not from President William Ruto.
Not from his cabinet.
Yeah, not from Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, not from Prime CS Musalia Mudavadi, who I told you I've just come from having a meeting
Yes.
with. Yeah. So I think for members of the cabinet, there's that element of collective responsibility, and they also need to be guided in that regard. And I can tell you, we've spoken as much from our own internal point of view, but expressly for Moses Kuria, I think he is really out of order, especially because he's an experienced politician. I mean, he's a two-term member of parliament. He ran to be governor of Kiambu. And I believe, even if he meant well, that is not the way to go about it, especially because he is the one who is mandated to superintend over the affairs of trade and industry in this country.
He made a joke about being the one in charge because everyone else is out. Do you think it's a telltale sign that it was Eden who was accompanying the president in the Silicon Valley and not the trade minister?
Allow me not to comment on that. I think that is a...
But you have to tell me this. The cabinet as it is, the best we've had, we can do better. The cabinet, you've just spoken about one of the cabinet secretaries. Are we going to have it in the same form and shape in 6 months?
To be honest, I am the chairman of the 50 CASs. All of the 50 of them. I'm their chair. And even as we wait for the court to fully determine our fate in terms of whether we will be fully back into office, if at all that answers my my friend.
It's been partially paid.
Yes. There is more talent within the rank and file of Kenya Kwanza that can assist the 22 CSs that has been cut by the Constitution. That is why the president wanted one CAS who is basically an assistant minister in every state department, so that you have one cabinet minister, you have an assistant minister for purposes of understanding, and a PS. That way then you will be able to have more political responsibility. Like now Moses Kuria has got 3 state departments under him, so he has 3 PSs. And the people who are supposed to deputize him is Ivan Skidero, very experienced, a former governor, guru. There is also my friend Kemosi Vincent, a very accomplished lawyer, and Lilian Tomitomi. So it would have been easier, maybe somehow, to ensure that then you have more people to perform. But I think in terms of the caliber of people in cabinet, and I believe we have very experienced people. I believe some of them are really trying, like I am very happy about Kithure Kindiki. He's trying, and yet he doesn't have a background in security. And the others you can mention, even I think Ezekiel Machogu. I'm not scoring, but I believe that with time, people will also get the rhythm and move forward. Whether there will be a cabinet reshuffle or not, I think that's a prerogative of the president. Masai, I don't have that.
But you are in a circle, so you hear things. Mutemi, you can comment about the cabinet, what you think about it in comparison to other cabinets that we have had. What's your reading of it? And I want to ask you about civil society and opposition, the role that it is. But first, you can respond to cabinet.
I think there's more talent in the proposed CAS. Let me just say that. The cabinet is underwhelming. I think it was the president had to reward his political cronies. And I think as a student of politics, I think he was also playing a game with it. He was hoping Parliament would step up and clean up that cabinet.
Yeah.
And then he can always say, najua mimi nilifanya kazi yangu lakini Parliament imekataa. But Parliament did not step up. So he's stuck with a cabinet that is mostly incompetent and qualified. Unfortunately, he also appointed people in the PS position who are supposed to be the technocrats, who are also underwhelming. There's a lot of experience, and both technical and political, in the proposed CAS positions. But the courts have made a ruling on that position. For me, it's clear it's an unconstitutional position. I think the brave thing would be change the constitution. If you want to reintroduce the assistant minister, change the constitution. Start a campaign for a referendum. Ruto is a master campaigner. I think that was part of the conversation of this topic. He's been campaigning forever.
Yeah.
Since he got into office, the first action was to bring pastors to State House. He started campaigning for 2027. Part of the appointments, they are also part of the campaign because you want to keep, every politician is always thinking about the next election.
Yeah.
So you can be sure the president and deputy president and Dr. Mwaura here are thinking about 2027 as we speak.
He's already told us about his 36-month plan.
Yeah. So that's what I'm going to say about that cabinet.
Okay. We're into talks right now. That is the opposition and Kenya Kwanza government. Civil society, as it stands, where's your place? Do you feel we have a weak opposition in the role that it's meant to play in holding the government of the day to account? Because much as it might reflect negatively on the government, there's something to say about those who are to hold the government to account. How are they doing?
I don't think Azimio is the opposition. It's just another, it's another arm. Both Kenya Kwanza and Azimio are just Kanu. Just Kanu guys. Just two sides of the same coin.
So a civil society where you sit, is that the opposition?
No, civil society is also not the opposition because civil society is divided between the binary, that binary.
Right.
A lot of us, the reason why you talked about my work in movement building is actually I work with community activists, advocates, to help people build power around their issues.
Yeah.
The era of central governance, centralized government, having solutions for all our problems, I think that era is gone. And that is the problem we are facing, in my opinion, whereby you have, from the Uhuru regime, attempts to decentralize after because the constitution devolved power. So Uhuru spent a lot of time trying to bring things back to the center. I see the same with his predecessor. I mean, with Ruto, who was his deputy then. It's even more vehement, wanting to have control at the center. Yet, I talked about respecting and dignifying Kenyans. If something is happening in Lamu, if something is happening in Wajir, something is happening in Kirinyaga, where I come from, the leadership in Kirinyaga and the people in Kirinyaga, I think would have better ways of finding solutions for that issue. Then they are facilitated either by national or county governments.
Yeah.
But I think Professor Kivuda Kibwana did that quite well in Makueni. That was the power of devolution. So what is civil society? You know, the definition of civil society. The way it is used by Kenyan media, it seems to mean NGOs. And there is a very big difference. Because we talk about NGOs in the governance sector, human rights and governance sector mainly, not even the other. There are many other NGOs,
yeah.
You know, development,
yeah.
Those are doing work, water, and that kind of thing. But the ones that usually hold government to account are the ones who people refer to as civil society. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the definition of civil society, it's any organized group for their own welfare that is not government or business.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, Law Society of Kenya is a civil society organization. NCCK is a civil society, Kenya College of Catholic Bishops, which is not the Catholic Church. Okay. In KCCB itself, Caritas, etc. are civil society organizations. Kiama, you know, when people come together to
common interest,
welfare, that is a civil society organization. So it's a very wide space, and some are working, some are not working.
From a political
but I know you were talking about the governance NGOs.
Yes.
Now, there's a challenge there. A lot of the challenge started when, and I think that's the time Dr. Mwaura also got into government.
Oh, the government.
Around the time they supported the government of Mwai Kibaki. I don't know whether that's the time you, Dr. Mwaura, you got into politics, but around that time, a lot of them got into government. One of the main leaders of civil society then was Kretu Murungi, who became the Minister for Energy, and others. People like Martha Karua were in civil society. And that decimated civil society of its political influence. But it's also people who knew how civil society works went into government and became adversaries. And I think civil society has never recovered since then. I can tell you that because I came into civil society in 2012.
Yeah.
And I am there in and out because I came from the corporate world. And I thought that's where redemption would be. And I have to admit there are issues. There are major issues in us.
Yeah.
So the opposition is not there. Where is the opposition? I think the opposition right now is in community groups, Kenyans who are standing up for because of issues in need. If you look at the...
So you're saying the opposition is being decentralized from the figurehead that we have known?
It's actually now, the opposition is more bottom-up right now than the government of President Ruto. Because if you look at the statistics around the opposition to the Finance Act, it was not Azimio. In fact, the people are going to the streets with or without Raila. In fact, Raila just rode that wave. People are organizing themselves across the country, and then they were shot, they were brutalized by the regime and all that.
Yeah.
And I'm saying those issues are dealt with. And the best thing the government can do, I'm sure it has statistics either from NSIS and NIS and all that, it needs to be able to deal with these issues, to be able to address, first of all, dignify Kenya. Wambie ukweli, Dr. Mwaura. We are not, I said I did not expect much from this government. That does not mean I was pessimistic. It means I was realistic. Because you can look at, there's a reason why if you want to employ a house help or gardener, you ask for a certain CV, certain questions. Yeah.
Qualifications.
In our politicians, we also look at their CVs, their record over the last 20, 30 years. What have they done? What have they delivered?
Yeah.
If someone has never run a kiosk profitably, how do you expect them to run a country? You know? So the opposition is going to come from the people. And that opposition, one of the reasons why I'm an activist, is to try to avoid the day we get to the point where Kenyans say, enough is enough.
Right.
And it can be avoided. We can do this. He says that the Kenyan Kwanza is a peasant revolution. To some extent, I agree. But unfortunately, the revolution was captured by snake oil salesmen. And that is going to be worse now. If you look at the people who voted for President Ruto, they're the most angry people right now. I did not vote for him. And I can survive any regime, personally. I can survive any regime. I've been arrested, yes, but I can survive any regime. Because I've worked in the corporate world, I've worked in civil society, I've worked in many spaces. I know how to find my way around. Despite the taxes being too high, I know how to cut down on some costs. Maybe I don't have as many beers as I normally have, you know, and I save. But it's about cutting my costs.
Yeah.
But that ordinary person to who he talked about, that 200 shillings.
When they're pushed to a corner,
You know, that person, they will lash out. And they'll not lash out, initially they will lash out to us. It will be my house help, thinking just because I have some money somewhere, or I have a 7-year-old new car, that I'm rich. And then they'll come for me. And that's what I always work with, you know, organizing communities to try and avoid.
All right. Dr. Mwaura, you sat on both sides, civil society space, governance, that is, and even in government. Where is the civil society today? You've rated the government, so rate the civil society, and also the opposition.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think, Mark, thank you for saying it. I've actually been in civil society. That is where I started out. And you can say civil society from the time we were student leaders at the university to, you know, civil society space in terms of NGOs and just youth activism. And then now being in government as a director of a parastatal, and then later on, you know, being an employee of government proper, having worked in international NGOs as far way back in Papua New Guinea, African level. So I've had a very great experience, really. And then, of course, being in a saga, mainstream ministry, being an advisor to Raila Odinga at one point, being in the National Assembly and Senate, and now. Let me say that personally, civil society is a very good training ground. In the 11th Parliament, something that maybe will shock my brother, out of 349 members of Parliament, 105 had a civil society background. So that tells you it's a very good training ground, space for future would-be parliamentarians, to the point that even the current Chief Justice is really a former member of the civil society, and you can go on and on and on. So it plays a very critical role as an incubator to future leadership in many spaces.
Okay.
And it's a hallowed space, I think.
So you were not bought out or betray the civil space to get into politics, to respond to what you said?
Not quite. I think it's a transition.
All right.
In fact, I saw Maurice Odhiambo writing something very bad about me. I was shocked because we were with him in civil society, and I was not amused by what he said. Maurice, you can respond, but I was surprised, my friend.
Yeah.
People grow, just like the way you were in primary school to high school to university.
Yeah.
The other day, I got an opportunity to be invited to go and listen to civil society and what they are clamoring for. The new civil society, my friend like Nerima Wako and Mark Anthony Agenga, the ones that are now in those former, or rather, the CRECO group of civil society that really championed the new constitution. I think to a certain extent, the civil society does not get the full picture. So when I listen to them now, as a son coming back home kind of a thing, I could see they really don't have the full picture. The society has moved on. The issues that were being canvassed in 2003 really are not the same that are now. And maybe I got my first government appointment as a director of a state corporation, the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, in 2004. I was still a university student, 22 years. So yes, I kind of benefited at that point. But then, I mean, I've joined government proper maybe around 2009, you know. So it's a training ground.
Yeah.
And the other day I was with the Gezorai Social Justice Center. Beautiful, beautiful young people. I like their gusto. They kind of rekindle the spirit. And I think that is where really, as you are saying, I actually agree with you, that is where the momentum is. It's not in the big ones. I think these ones, over-dependence on donor funding, also makes them to be captured to the donor issues. Right. But the real issues are in the grassroots. In fact, even for an economy, before the economists tell you it's going bad, ask them Mamamboga, they'll tell you. Okay. So I think civil society has now moved away from the streets to litigation. I think the new area of contestation is litigation. For a long time it was Parliament. And Parliament is extremely powerful in this constitution. It's the most powerful entity, in my humble submission. So they are moved to litigation. Let's see how that pans out. The so-called government NGOs, the constitutional offices, and independent bodies, you know, those are basically government NGOs. Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, CAJ. They don't have the otherness that they used to have before. So I think the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. They will continue to do so. Even for those of us who are reformers from within, we want that backup from the other side. But not just for the sake of it. Don't just oppose a government just because you don't agree with it. I know it's difficult, easier said than done, but we still work with organizations like TI. I have just stepped down as a secretary of the African Parliamentarians Network Against Corruption, APNAC. And then we also have caucuses in Parliament, for example. I can speak more robustly about Parliament because I was there for almost 10 years, that are basically like quasi-NGOs within Parliament. So I started the Kenya Young Parliamentarian Association, working with the youth sector, the Kenya Disability Parliamentary Association, again, which is my brainchild for the disability sector, APNAC, as I've mentioned, and others that we were, and the Human Rights Caucus. Yes. Because you see that we wanted to activate and to have people from all parties who can rally on our agenda. But I strongly think, Mark Masai, without losing the trail of thoughts, civil society has gone down. It's not the credible voice that it used to be. Some people there have been doing it for far too long. Sometimes we need to transition. Okay. You know, I don't want to mention names, but I don't think that robustness is there. And also in terms of issues. I mean, issues. Now you don't need to call people to the streets. I think social media is more activist-led than just maandamano. Yes. If something trends on Twitter, now called X, or on whatever, it's likely to get attention of the power wielders. Yes. That's why today we are discussing the tweets of David Day. It's not because he spoke anywhere. David Day was just tweeting, or Moses Kuri. It's just a tweet. But before it would have been, you call a press conference, you have 10 or 15 radio stations and TVs, and you speak to the mic. So things have changed, and I think civil society has not transitioned into that. I think we are using the old template. It's like trying to navigate Mombasa with the map of Nairobi. What of the opposition? Do we have an opposition? The opposition has lost its legitimacy. Sorry to say. I think because of the overstaying of Raila Odinga, and I'm sorry that we have to mention him.
A man you've advised before.
Yeah, because his best bet was in 2007. That was vintage Raila. That was vantage Raila. He really could have gotten it right that time. But now, I think even him, possibly, at some point he even told me he was not going to run in 2017, 2022. So we need a new group of young people. And I think it's going to happen in 2027. As at now, they don't seem to have they don't seem to inspire the people. That's why Maandamano, for example, failed.
Do you think he'll allow any other younger person come up and take the mantle?
Him?
Yeah. Knowing him closely.
He may not, but power is never given, it's taken. Even for William Ruto, Uhuru could not allow him to be president. He became. So I don't think it's Raila who will pass on the baton. That kind of, even Uhuru Kenyatta, remember, Kibaki he was not Kibaki's preferred successor. Kibaki preferred Musalia Mudavadi, my boss. So these things are taken. I mean, if you wait to be given, you'll not be given. You have to claim your space, Mark. You know, you can't just wait and say somebody must donate it to you, because even them they were not donated for. I think there's something I'm coming to learn in politics. You know, people go and do their ukarabati, and then they're sanitized by the formal systems, by you being given a certificate and you say, I have won the election. But sometimes you look at what they did to win that election is very contestable. So even for this, let somebody pass the baton because they have to, like the way Uhuru had to give it to Ruto because he had won. But if Ruto had waited now because of his political bank of favors that he had supported the man twice, maybe he would not have become president. And so therefore, that space, I see some young people trying. I don't want to mention their names to be oppositional, because at that point you can also not appropriate that outcome to a certain group of people. I think it's unfair because power is very fluid. And I will tell you so. At some point, I was an advisor to the Prime Minister. At another point, I was a member of Parliament. At some point, I was a senator. Now I'm a CAS waiting for the court process to finish. So these things are fluid. Today you're in the opposition, tomorrow you're in government, tomorrow you're in between somewhere there. So whoever that is going to take over the mantle of our generation, I believe is already present, but it takes a lot of work and, of course, with the help of God.
Maandamano failed. Do you see the talks going anywhere?
I don't know whether you want me to give you my personal opinion, but if it leads to a referendum, it will flop. Yeah.
I didn't answer that question. And it's because I don't consider the talks, they're not going anywhere, in my opinion.
And the intention of, or at least what it's being sold for the Mwananchi is not?
I mean, the minute the issue of cost of living was not on the table, for me it was done.
All right. Let me end it there, but there's someone who was watching and they asked, I have to give it to them because on our YouTube live, they asked Josegi, good evening from Meru. I always like the debates by CAS, especially pale KTN, sasa uko social newsroom na tunashukuru. Ask Honorable Mwaura if they were paid for the hours they worked as CAS before the High Court quashed their nomination.
No. By the way, on a very serious note, the president committed himself to the rule of law. And that is why he had to appoint the judges that had not been appointed. And this government has really tried, against very serious provocation, to uphold with the court orders. That I can assure you, without a doubt.
So you're serving pro bono?
No. There are many ways to serve this country, and the best service is the one that is given for free. I don't think we can equate public service to pay.
Right.
Really, business pays much better. And by the way, maybe my brother here, now that you moved from the corporate, if you want to really make money, don't come to politics.
Or civil society.
Yeah.
Because people also assume there's a lot of money.
There's no money in civil society, not unless you still don't have money. So, so please, if you are a businessman, do business. By the people who thrive better in politics, there are two types of people, Mark Masai. There are professionals like you, for example, and there are many media people who have transitioned to politics. There are lawyers, civil society activists like ourselves, name them. They are the good do-gooders who excel in their area of interest, and then they are elected into office or nominated or appointed. Now, those ones are unlikely to make any money because they come with their soul. Then there are businessmen who make money and they gain wealth and status in society. Then they do some one or two philanthropic things and they want to self-actualize. And they may even want to change the society. They get into politics. They thrive better because they are more calculating. They are profit-driven. And now we have our politics has boiled down to how much are you paying me for coming to listen to you? You get the money that we give, eh? So while me, I will be serving, and I'll tell you, I did this and this and this in my tenure, they may not be monetized. But then the other person will say, while I was serving, I made some 2-3 deals, line up. So there's a way, and of course, politics is about the sharing of resources. I define it as the informal that constitutes the formal. It is he who gets where and how. It's out of the possible. So people are very hand-to-mouth. They are hand-to-mouth. So you tell them, those a lot of policy issues, hizo ni stories za jaba. Them is, wewe unaongea tunatoka na nini hapa. No matter how good you speak, no matter how they agree with you. In fact, let me summarize by this because you're giving me that opportunity. In political communication, which is the other name for propaganda, the real name for propaganda, you communicate using three elements.
Yeah.
I wrote about that about 3 weeks ago in the Star newspaper. You hear the brain, the heart, and the stomach. For this is the brain, and it's intellectual, and it is concise, and it is policy-based, but it's very taxing. That friend of mine falls in that category, Jose. And I appeal to those people more, myself. And it is the right thing to do. Then there is a heart, about emotions, about euphoria, about some coming, Canaan, and moving, and that is for women. And stories of walking without shoes and being a son of a single mother.
Selling chickens.
Those kind of things. They appeal to the heart. Then there's the stomach. How much am I getting from this transactional relation? Now, the politics of business is about, is a transaction between relationships, resources, and opportunities. Yeah? So it becomes extremely difficult. Remember, by the end of the day, this one applies more to men and the youth and the people who may not be very privileged in society. But after all is said and done, all of us have got a head, a brain, a heart, and a stomach. So that for anyone who is trying to do public policy, public communication, will tell you a lot. However, I must concede, and my brother will allow me to say this, defending government is not easy. Why? Because politics is about perception, and perception is a production of communication. And, Mark Masai, the opposition belongs to everybody. The government belongs to nobody, but somebody must be accountable to everybody, the public. That is the irony of communication.
So any mtu wa tumbo wa kichwa ama
mimi ni wa hapa sana.
Intellectual.
And that is sometimes
And I admit I've seen him struggle with politics, as he was earlier on in this conversation, because he had to defend the regime in a situation that is very indefensible. He did quite well. But just wanted to say, just reinforce a point he made about civil society. So when he was in civil society, that time I was in the corporate world, but civil society was digital. Government was analog. Now that has flipped. The government is very digital. Civil society is analog and is playing catch up. So that's also a challenge. They're not able to communicate despite all these modern communication tools. Yeah. And part of the reason why I went into civil society was to help with the communication. We captured Twitter, and then somewhere along the way, the ball was dropped. We actually worked very hard to capture Twitter.
But then, Mutemi, would you ever assume office?
In politics? Yeah. Not in the current political dispensation. Okay. Not in the current Kenyan politics of the ones that he has just
Mark,
described.
If you allow me, why?
Because I cannot lie, Dr. Mwaura. I've sat with people like the current majority leader at Citizen when I was defending NASA in 2017. And he spoke, they were with the current MP for, actually my MP in Dagoretti South, KJ. And they lied straight, and then there was a break, and I was asking why they're lying. And they told me, you're lying because you know you can't lie. They can say anything and get away with it. And they could see, how incredulous it was for me. Okay. Because me, I will speak to the intellect, like he has said. But the politician will do anything. Now the ones who talk about stomach and heart, so the ones who will lie. Will tell you tomorrow we are going to build 100 dams, within 60 days. That's a lie. It's not possible. But they will say it with a straight face. So
Yeah.
because of that, I cannot get into
Na
politics.
nimepediwa hope.
Siwezi uza
Dr. Mwaura amesema kwa mwanasiasa mambo ni
ni matatu. Kichwa, roho na tumbo.
Natumbo.
Yes.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your time and for your thoughts that you have shared. These are things that many people would agree with, disagree with, but it's all a conversation to move it forward in terms of help shape some policy and even decisions moving forward. I hope the message reaches those who've spoken to the Kenyans without empathy, and you've said they're out of line. You've spoken about the opposition, where it is, and actually that is not existent. And let's hope this message reaches home. I'm sure this message here reached many of you, and that is the loss of, and I want to end it there, of a phenomenal sports commentator and journalist, Sean Cardovillis. He passed on this past weekend, 2 weekends ago. That's not this Saturday, last Saturday. And Sean Cardovillis, 50 years of age, he was one of the best, in fact, if I may, the voice of sports in Kenya. Took a bow, but you know, he will remain in our hearts and even in our ears and our minds because of that signature voice, Sean Cardovillis. He was cremated his body was cremated at a private family affair this past Thursday, and there will be memorial at the Consolata Shrine. That is this coming Friday on the 22nd of September from 10 a.m. To about 1 o'clock, and that is open to many of you who have watched him, listened to him in his art and his profession as a sports journalist. And you are invited. I will take this opportunity for those who actually would want to come and say kwaheri to Sean Cardovillis, and we say pole sana here at the Social Newsroom to the family of Sean Cardovillis. And I'd like to read something here, and nitaskuma mwanasiasa hapa na pia mwana civil society watume kitu, mwanaharakati atume kitu, because there's still a fundraiser for the family, and the family kindly request for all donations to be made. The till number is 892308. That's till number 892308, and the name that will come up is Kaz Entertainment. Please send whatever you can, whatever amount will go to helping the family, just to also show how much you appreciate him if you ever heard him in action. I'm sure you did.
That's all. I really loved his voice. I
Yeah.
was very pleasantly surprised that President Ruto really also liked him.
Yeah.
And the deputy president. I mean, Sean Cardovillis. I mean, who doesn't remember him? I mean, he was really great.
Yeah.
And I hope they can also get to the bottom of what really happened, even if just for the record.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, Sean is part of the generation of journalists who professionalized media. I was born and grew up at the time of VOK and KBC. And Capital FM was the first, private FM stations.
Yeah.
And I remember his time there and many other, iconic journalists.
Yep.
But Sean stood out, and especially in sports reporting. I think he has set the bar that everybody else has used, to gauge their contribution to the media.
Yeah.
So I'd like to express my condolences to the family and his friends. I never met him at a personal level, but I always listen to him.
Asante sana.
Did you start at Capital Family?
No, I started somewhere else, at Classic 105, but I did work with Sean Cardovillis at NTV.
As NTV.
And he was a friend of mine, beyond just working. And in fact, that's one of the main reasons I was unable to do an episode last week. It was a heavy one. So tunasema pole kwa familia, na tukisema pole, najua utatuma kitu, na pia wewe nyumbani unaweza tuma kitu tafadhali. The family will appreciate. That's Social Newsroom for the week. We'll be back to discuss other topical issues. You never know. It could be about YouTube and suspension of YouTube channels and what goes on around there. Let's stick by here online, and we'll be telling you what the next episode is about. Have yourself a good night. I'm Mark Masai. Asante.
Thank you.